Welcome to Your Need to Know. Today we're talking about Jill's House. Located here in Northern Virginia, and joining me in this segment is CEO and President Joe Dillon. Thanks so much for joining me, Joel.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
So I've known about Jill's House for a long time. I didn't really know the story behind Jill's House, but I knew that it provides respite care for intellectually disabled people and their families who need respite, right?
Absolutely.
So years ago, many years ago, 50 years ago, a lot of times when people had a severe disability, they didn't stay at home. They ended up a lot of times in institutions.
Right.
The Department of Justice, along with our culture generally, our culture has decided that people really need to be integrated into the community. People don't need to be shunted away in institutions. They should be in their community. And so a lot of people who have all kinds of disabilities end up at home with their families. And that often becomes a 24/7 job. So tell us a little bit about the genesis of Jill's House and how you came into being.
Yeah, so like you said, we serve families who are raising children with intellectual disabilities. These families are just like your family and my family, but they face a lot of challenges most of us don't face. The stress levels are off the charts for these families. Divorce is much more prevalent than in the general population. And that's not because they're bad people or because their kids with disabilities are bad. That's because the overwhelming stress of this 24/7 care takes a toll on people, and it would take a toll on you, and it would take a toll on me. So Lon and Brenda Solomon, who pastor McLean Bible Church here in the area, had a daughter, Jill, in 1992, and she was born perfectly healthy, but it turned out that she had some pretty severe disabilities, a thing called Dravet syndrome. And out of their experience of raising their family of 3 boys and then Jill and Lon pastoring the church, they were having a real tough time with it, and some people in the congregation came alongside them and provided them some respite care. Brenda says that was the first time that laughter came back into their home and when they were able to breathe and be a family again. So long story short, out of their experience of respite, they decided we need to do some more things. So they started some ministries at the church to welcome people who were raising kids with disabilities, and they really wanted to do more. And so in about 2000, 2001, they had a vision for a short-term overnight respite center, Jill's House, and that vision became a reality in October of 2010.
So the facility itself is quite amazing, and that involved a capital campaign. Putting something like that together is a huge investment.
It absolutely was. So the building itself cost about $13 million to build, and that was all privately funded. There's no government funding that comes to Jill's House. So we rely on donations not only to build the building, but to run all of our programs and to do everything that we do. So by God's grace, He's given us 4,000 donors in 50 states in the nation.
Wow, 4,000
4,000, yeah, and hopefully growing.
Right.
And they support us with gifts from $10 to $1,000 to $100,000 and beyond. And that's how we're able to do what we do.
So tell me about the demand. It would seem to me that in this area, from what I know of the disability community in general, there's probably a greater demand than there is capacity to serve it.
Absolutely. So there are about 2.5 million families in America who we could serve. It's probably more than that now. We have a new family register with us for services on average almost every day. So our resources can't begin to keep up with the demand that we see. So we serve about 500 families here, so that just scratches the surface of about the 40,000 families here in this area who we could serve. But like I said, we are really grateful to have the resources that we do have to serve them with respite. And respite for these families, they cite it as the #1 need that they have more than anything. You'd think it would be access to educational resources or adaptive technology or things like that, but respite, they just need a break, they want a break, and there's nowhere else to turn for it.
Right, because in the disability, intellectual disabilities runs on a spectrum. So there is some children will have more mobility, and some will have less, and so that also is a spectrum as far as the need for families when they have a great physical care for their children, when it really truly is 24/7.
Absolutely, and like you said, the children that we serve, they're all diagnosed with an intellectual disability, but that can look very, very different. Some of them have very intense medical needs and physical needs. Others have very few physical needs. A lot will have behavioral needs and specialized behavioral needs and things like that. And you can't just call a babysitter for these kinds of these kinds of kids generally. And even sometimes grandma and grandpa, it would be overwhelming for them or for other family members. So you really do need specialized care, and that's what we can provide. Our staff are very well trained, and they love these kids and go above and beyond for them. Our nursing staff provides excellent medical care while the kids are with us. So it really takes, you can't just do something like this on the cheap or very easily. It takes a lot of professionalization to make our parents, to put them at ease, to give them peace of mind while their kids are away from them.
So talk a little bit about your staff. Who do you have on staff? What are the kinds of people who come there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have people from all walks of life. We have a very large direct care staff, so the people who work directly with the kids while they're there, those are called client care specialists. A lot of times they'll come from special education backgrounds or psychology backgrounds or social work backgrounds, but really they come from all walks of life. We have a lot of nurses on staff, as you can imagine. There is a lot of medical care that goes into caring for the kids we serve. So anytime there are children with us, we have at least one nurse there, and they're doing medication administration, G-tube feedings, managing all the bumps and bruises that happen at a place like Jill's house when you got 30 kids in one place, and they do a fantastic job with it.
So what about volunteers? So do you have people who swing in there and offer support on a volunteer basis? We
do. We have several hundred volunteers who give very graciously of their time, and they do all kinds of things at Jill's house. Some of them will work directly with the kids. Some people aren't very comfortable around our kids, and that's okay. Not everyone has to be. So they volunteer in the kitchen, they work at the front desk, they help us filing in the office, so any number of things. So we have several hundred volunteers here in this area, and through our national locations, we're a lot more volunteer reliant, so we have hundreds more volunteers across the country. So tell us a little bit about some of those locations and the programs outside this area. Yeah, so we have this wonderful facility here, as you mentioned. It's 42,000 square feet. It costs $13 million to build. Missionally, it is a huge asset. It allows us to serve so many people, and people who probably wouldn't be served other places. Financially, it's a gargantuan liability. It just costs so much to own and operate. So the thought several years ago was, how do we do the same amazing respite that Jill's House does, but without all those upfront and ongoing costs? So we developed a camp-based program. So I'll pick on our site in Austin, Texas. Okay. So the way it works there, we find a partner church. In this case, it's Austin Ridge Bible Church. We hire local staff, so Jill's House staff in the Austin area, and then we find a camp, ideally within about 90 minutes of the church there. So on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, parents will drop their kids off at the church. Our staff takes the kids, loads them up in the vans, drives them out to camp, and the kids get an amazing 48-hour camp experience, and the parents get the same respite that they get at Jill's House. So it's a scalable, replicable model that we've been able to take now to 8 states. And 8 states? We open our site in Seattle, Washington here in April. Yeah. So you have this camp program here in Virginia as well, then, too? We do. There's a camp out in Middleburg, Camp High Road, that we've been using, and we have Jill's House camp out there 26 weeks a year. 26 weeks a year? Yeah. That is amazing. Yeah. So what is your, the wait list as far as, like, you said every week you have new people signing up, but what does that wait list look like? Oh, it is, it's depressing to know how long it is. So we have a new family register with us almost every day. The barrier between us and serving those families is more resources to hire more staff to serve those families. So it's not really space, it's staff hours. It's staff hours, yeah. There are some space limitations, but we haven't hit them yet. So, so more money equals more staff equals more families served. So typically, how long would somebody come and stay there? So we have 3 programs. The core program is our weekend program. So parents drop their kids off on Friday night and pick them up again Sunday night. So parents get 48 hours of rest, 2 nights to sleep through the night, which they don't often get. Right. So that's our core program. We also run a weeknight program. We send our buses out in the community, pick kids up directly from school, bring them back to Jill's House. They stay the night with us. We drop them off at school again in the morning, so parents get a day and a half essentially in midweek. That's amazing. Yeah. And then whenever school is not in session, so Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Christmas break, summer break, spring break, whenever school is not in session, we run day camps. So essentially 9 to 5, kids come with us. Parents don't have a lot of care options for these kids, and so we provide that service as well. So, so that's very interesting. So there is a day program in addition to the overnight program that's really tied to the school schedule. Exactly. Yeah, we are focused on overnight. We feel very strongly about that. As a parent, I know the difference between a date night out with my wife and a weekend away from the kids. It's much more relaxing, and you can really connect as a couple. So we're committed to overnight, but running day camp meets a real significant need of the parents that we serve, so we're happy to do it.
So going forward, so you've been in this job 2 years.
I have.
So what are your benchmarks? I mean, what things are you hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, the answer is more. We feel good about the programs that we run. We know it makes a meaningful impact in our parents' lives. We know that anecdotally, and you'll hear from some parents we serve in a few minutes here, and you'll hear their story. And we know it empirically. We worked with some researchers at Johns Hopkins to measure the results of what we do, and we know that through respite we can bring the stress levels of these families down, and we can keep it down. That doesn't solve all the challenges that they face, but it does give them room to breathe and has terrific ripple effects in their lives and their kids' lives. So it's a fantastic thing to do. So we just need to do more of it.
It's interesting that you mentioned research. So have they actually studied sort of the impact? I would assume that there's a tremendous amount of benefit to the kids being in a community of people where they have peers, different kinds of peers, like other than their siblings or where they go to school. This is a whole different group of people.
Yeah.
So have people actually studied sort of the impact on the kids?
You know, I don't know of any studies that would show hard data on how it changes. I can give you a few anecdotes.
Sure.
So one thing we hear from our families very often is that having a child with an intellectual disability is socially isolating, not just for them, but for their kids as well. So coming to Jill's house, like you said, is an opportunity for them to play with their peers, to have fun, to go in the pool, to go in the moon bounce, to play on the playground, and to spend relaxed time together. And they end up developing all kinds of skills through that, you know, just through play, through these opportunities that we can offer that most other places can't offer. They build terrific friendships. There are a couple girls who will put together in a room. They've developed a friendship, and when the staff goes in to check on them and hears them giggling just like a normal overnight, you know, they dive back under the sheets to pretend that they're sleeping. So there, you know, we can help eliminate some of the isolation that these families and these children face.
I think that's really, really important because, you know, within the disability community, you know, we're all unique. But let's face it, you know, when kids are in a group that's overwhelmingly neurotypical, it doesn't always feel that way. I can imagine that being in a place like Jill's house, everybody's unique in a very positive way because everybody truly is different.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our dads says it really well. He says, everywhere we go, pretty much, we have to figure out how to change ourselves and our family to fit into the situation. And Jill's house is one of the very few places where we can go and it's tailor-made for us. We don't have to fit in. We're normal here. We're typical. Our kids are. We're loved. We're celebrated. And it's a blessing to be able to celebrate them in that way.
Well, it's a blessing to have you here, Joel. I really appreciate your time. Join us after this break when we're going to talk to Eric and Melissa, who are parents they have a child at Jill's house, and we'll get some firsthand experience. So join me after the break.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish!
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're talking about Jill's House. Joining me in this segment are two parents, Melissa and Eric. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
To talk about their daughter Gigi and how they came to find Jill's House and their experience with the program. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Please tell me a little bit about your family.
So we have three children. Gigi is a twin. They're 11. The girls are 11, and we have an older brother, Max, and Gigi's twin, Elena. And Gigi was normotypical until she was 4, and she developed what looked like a stomach virus, which turned into encephalitis, which turned out to be a tumor. So she had many different illnesses and rarities that culminated in a acquired brain injury. So she has now acquired brain injury, a lot of deficits in her learning and her memory and her behavioral, and she also has seizures. So that was when she was 4, and fast forward, can't do the math, 7 years later. I guess 2 years ago, I was really struggling and looking around. And Gigi, it was very hard for her as socially she was not growing. We had gotten her in a good place in a special needs school, but she wasn't growing and creating those friendships that she really wanted to have. And also just the illness aside, I was just thinking socially for her, what I wanted to have that social component. So I looked and found out about Jill's House. We were on the wait list, and about a year later, when we got off the wait list and she started to go to Jill's House, it wasn't until she had her first weekend away that I'd realized that the need that our family had. So I was so focused on her needs, and I wanted her to have friends, I wanted her to have this. I didn't realize the pure exhaustion that we were going through as a family, and how, as I say, almost stunted we had done with our family. When she got sick, it's like everything stopped. And we got to start to grow a little bit as a family, with she getting a break, to be in that inclusive environment where she wasn't different.
Right.
And the other siblings got to have some time with Mom and Dad, and not just thinking about Gigi and her illness all of the time.
So this has been great, Eric, not just for you and Melissa in fighting off exhaustion, but also for Gigi in the fact that she now has friends who are, it's hard to be the odd person in a neurotypical group of any kind. And we were talking about that with Joel, the fact that when you go there, you can come as you are, you come as yourself, and you find friends who are your friends because everybody gets to come as exactly who they are. So, how have you felt the benefit of Gigi's time at Jill's House?
Well, she's just very excited when she knows she's going, and it just makes her getting up for school, just knowing that she's going in a couple days. So when am I going to go to Jill's House? And she tells all her teachers, and so she's very excited. And I think everyone is excited because we make plans. What are we going to do when Gigi's away as a family?
Right.
That's something maybe we couldn't do when she's with us, because we have to be
Well, that's why they call it special needs, right?
Right,
She just has special needs, and that impacts what you're able to do with your other children, as
Yes.
it would anyone.
Yeah.
But this seems to be a win-win in that she gets to go someplace where she's not so much a special needs as she is part of a group of everybody who's just together doing their own thing. And your family gets some time to read. Everybody has to rejuvenate.
Well,
You
yeah, we
cannot do anything 24/7. That's like running a marathon without ever stopping. Like, that's not sustainable.
Well, we did it for many years, but we get to, it's a reconnecting in a different way. So Jill's House is running us. I know Joel had talked about the 3 programs, but what he didn't mention is some of the outreach they do with the families. And we were privileged to do a couples retreat where it was really focusing on on couples who have children with special needs. They're going to be doing a siblings workshop, and her sister is so excited. She gets to go one night to Jill's House, not as an overnight, but just an hour or two,
Right.
play in the moon bounce, get to experience what her sister gets to do, and then they're going to give some counseling for those typical neurotypical children whose siblings are special at Jill's house. So Gigi is so excited that her sister gets to go to Jill's house as well. So it's a program for the whole family.
But individually, so you get something as a couple, and the siblings
Yeah.
get something that's just for them, and Gigi gets something that's just for her. I think it's remarkable, and I have to believe that Jill's house has really created a model that could be done in other communities. You wonder how anybody manages. I mean, you did this for what, 7 years?
Yeah, so it was five or something until she got the help. And as they say, I guess the research, but I can say anecdotally, you don't have to research me. Having that break, it's taught me now that when she's having a respite, I have a break, but it spills over into the rest of the time with us. So it's not that I'm sitting around thinking, oh God, I'm just counting the days till she goes to Jill's house or something. It just takes that little bit of a burden off of you, and then you just shift your thinking and the approaches. And so the priorities I might have had the first time she went to Jill's house are definitely different than they go now.
Well, she's an old hand, right? She's like, she knows the drill, and so, they say that attitude is contagious. So when Gigi is happy, how does that affect your family, Eric?
Oh, we're happy.
Because she's got something to look forward to, and I think that must, by just proximity, spill out to the rest of the family, that everybody's got something to look forward to.
And I have to say, I've gotten to know some of the other families, and at this couples retreat, it was about connecting as a couple, but also they encouraged us to connect with each other, so in support, and so that's important.
It is, because you've got something in common with these parents that meeting somebody at a barbecue or some other place, they wouldn't necessarily have any idea what your life really is, right?
Yeah, it's very isolating, and as Joel had mentioned, there's a lot of things that you feel that you can't do. And we have a lot of friends that we've known for years and have been through with us from her illness, but it's still different, and it's still nice to. Yeah, there's just no understanding of what we're going through, and it's a great.
Well, I love the idea that they've done these different kinds of outreach. Now, you were saying before we started this segment that you're working on something with her school, that she will have classmates, and that there will be next year a more robust program for that particular school.
Right. So there already were 2 or 3 children, unbeknownst to us, that were going to Jill's house, and I'd heard about the weeknight program that Joel had mentioned. And you could do a self-transport, but for us it's just not possible, just in a proximity. But we got enough families that go to her school that have signed up to do this program. So starting actually in May, we're going to get 2 in this school year, in May and the first week of June, and then starting next semester or next school year, she'll be eligible for 1 to 2 nights per month. And it's great because she's going to go with her classmates and her schoolmates.
Right?
Yes, she has one little boy. They ran into each other one time just by fluke on a weekend, and apparently we're coming in the next Monday at school high-fiving each other. Hey, I saw you at Jill's house. They were so excited. So this is going to be really a bonding experience for some of her classmates and her.
Well, I think everybody looks for their community, and everyone needs friends. Everyone needs friends. And it seems to me that in addition to giving you a break and her siblings some opportunity to have some time with you, she has found a community where these are real friendships.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So Joel was describing how when they, girls get together, 11, we all know 11-year-old girls and how they do. They're just like any other girls. They giggle, they have secrets, they want to hang out together. How have you seen her blossom?
Well, I know sometimes she has some memory problems, so it's hard to remember what did she do. But so what's great is they always give us a spreadsheet or whatever. They give us a document summary what she's done for the weekend. And one thing that's so great with Gigi is she likes to help out, and she's been paired up with other children who might be nonverbal. And I've heard what she does is she'll explain to the caretaker, well, this is what she wants, and this is what she wants. So she's been able to be in that big sister role,
Right.
And be kind of a leader for her disability. Even though she has a disability, she can be a leader. So
That is not something I would have considered before, the fact that, people want to help other people. That's a natural instinct, that people want to help other people. And she has found a way to do that I would never have considered before.
Yeah. Well, she's always very empathetic, but she gets to really shine and be, seen as that leader, and that's great.
Who knows, maybe when she's an adult, she'll be a volunteer at
Yeah.
Jill's house.
And so tell me a little bit about what your expectations are. I mean, do you have a sense from Gigi what her expectations are? I mean, at 11, that's pretty young, but still.
It's young, but we just went to a school meeting, our yearly IEP meeting, and they were talking about, well, when she gets a job, and it just brought tears to my eyes that the word, Gigi, future job, were in a sentence together. And they were explaining, well, we have some of these community outreach or some of the support. And you're right, I think, why not? Why couldn't she do something like that? At Jill's house, or one of these extensions, I could completely see her doing that. She has so many gifts and could bring to other, joy to other families.
The world has changed a lot. As I said with Joel, 50 years ago, this is not the life that children had, and their expectations were limited, and it was all very different. And now they're in school settings, they're being mainstreamed with neurotypical peers, as well as they have places like Jill's house. And it seems to me that the expectations are being raised among children with special needs to believe that they will have an amazing quality of life.
So that's one thing that came out of that couples retreat, and I don't want to speak for everything, but one of the husband was talking about, just because our children are special needs doesn't mean that we don't have to still launch them into adulthood.
Yes.
And to make their lives as best as we can get them. So that really stuck with me, because I think still there's times I think, well, who knows what we are not sure what she's going to be able to be doing. But right, 11, I'm having expectations on her siblings. I'm going to start putting some on her as well.
I think it's great. There's, George Mason has the Mason Life program. I'm going to do a program on that too. But Mason Life is about post-secondary education for special needs kids, and these are young people who are thriving in the community and have expectations to have a job. So I think Gigi is well poised between a loving and caring family and a wonderful place like Jill's house. I really do. Thank you both so much for sharing your family with us. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
So Jill's house, as Joel said to us, it's not that they have a space limitation, they have a capacity limitation. So donations are greatly appreciated. They can expand what they do. And this is what you need to know.